Good evening, everyone. Evara Voices welcomes you all for today's episode. Our guest today is Tanya Joy Morgan, a digital strategist, educator, and the founder of Panoptic Foundations, where she helps fiction authors build an aligned, sustainable online presence. With over 30 years of experience across business strategy, marketing, technical writing, and hands-on teaching, Tanya specializes in simplifying the tech and strategy authors need to grow with confidence. Let's welcome Tanya and hear more about her life and work. Hi, Tanya. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. I just gave a brief description and introduction about you. Say a few words before we jump into our questions.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me here. It's
Yeah, my pleasure.
lovely to jump in.
Yes.
I'm Tanya. I'm the founder of Panoptic Foundations, and I also write fantasy. I've been writing fiction for about 15 years, and
Wonderful.
I teach fiction authors about marketing and tech with the goal of attracting the right readers without the overwhelm. That's the big thing.
That's wonderful. And how do you lead? Because everybody comes to you as a fiction writing author, but how do you create individualized, uh, marketing or anti-marketing for them? Because
Mhm.
I read about anti-marketing for fiction authors, which is a very unique term that you've used. So tell us more about it.
Sure, yeah. The whole idea behind anti-marketing for fiction authors is really to reduce the pressure.
Mm.
So and there's actually different definitions for anti-marketing. If you Google it, you'll get a few different things. But the perspective that I take with it is about reducing pressure and doing what feels right for you, right?
Mm.
So this is how I use that to personalize with the authors that I'm working with because when it comes to marketing your fiction, the probably the most important thing is that you enjoy what you're doing, right? So there are many, many different ways that we can market ourselves as an author.
Mm.
And too often, authors tend to keep an eye in very public spaces, especially social media, and see what popular authors are doing and, how they've gotten traction, what worked for them. And it's a good place to start. I mean, always doing your research and seeing what your peers are doing for sure. But I see too many authors trying to do things that don't align with them,
Mm.
right? So
Right.
they don't want to be on video. They don't want to be an entertainer dancing around and, lip syncing or doing whatever. But they've seen that that works for others. So they think they have to do that because
Right.
they don't know what other options they have, right? So that's where the personalization really comes into it because I do have a, very broad experience and knowledge on different types of marketing avenues that authors can take. So it starts with a conversation around, you know, who are you? What are your strengths? What do you
Right.
enjoy? Do you like talking to people? Do you prefer being in person? Do you like being, faceless and working through text only? Like there's a lot of different angles that we consider. And then from there, it's about figuring out which pieces to focus on and breaking it down. So, like, again, another mistake a lot of authors make is they try to do too many things all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even though, we're constantly told, oh, you don't need to be everywhere, it's really
Right.
hard to ignore that, right? Or yeah, it's not hard to ignore it. It's hard to ignore the fact that there isn't everywhere. There's all these different options. And I think a bit of FOMO creeps in. You don't want
Right.
to miss out on, well, but there might be a reader over here or there might be one over there. And it's natural. Like I'm a huge FOMO type person.
I
So
think that's what we are experiencing being on that group also. I notice that we are scared to miss out on if something, I mean, like we miss the train and then what happens next. But there are two things like now, as you said, don't be all over the place. There are two types of people. One who totally depend. on writing for their career in life, and there are people who do various other things, and writing is one of those, which I think for me also it is like that. So then we come to that author website, author website. Okay, do we create a individualized or just writing for writing website separately, and we keep the other areas separate? Or do we also include, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm an interior designer, I'm this, I'm that, in between I'm an author somewhere? How does that appeal to agents and publishing houses, and how far it can take it? Does the bio help the author, or does it cloud and control the real aspect of writing?
Really good questions and thought process there. The answer does come with a caveat of it. It does depend a little bit because it will be kind of individual to each person. I
Yes,
would say that if a person wants to build an author career, regardless of how many other things they've got going on, an
absolutely.
author career is something somewhere in their horizon. It might not be right away, but at
Mm.
some point. I would say they should have a dedicated author website. There's nothing wrong with cross-linking and referencing. I do that on my own stuff. I've
Mhm.
got my Panoptic Foundations website. I've got my author website. Both of them cross-link to each other. I mention both. I'm very transparent about the fact that there are two sides to me, if you
Right.
will. And that's totally fine. But when you're looking purely at your author career, having a website that is your author name and is very focused on you as an author, right? Like
Okay.
that's what the book community, the publishing industry, your readers, that's what they're interested in when they're looking for you as an author. The fact that you do, build websites or do interior design or are
Yes.
a fashion, like all of that is fine and interesting once they start to get to know you. But if it's all crammed together in one website, it can get pretty overwhelming and messy. And people are like, okay, well, why am I here? Where do I go? Like, does that make sense?
That, yes, absolutely. Because that you mentioned, the last bit definitely makes a lot of sense. But coming back to the name, like, okay, the rest of the professions go by our official name. Like we run the company or we work for someone, we are giving our official names. But when it comes to being an author, people can have their pen name, like pseudonym. And so I think if you're going to change your name for your books, it doesn't make sense to be on the same website as your other work, because it creates a conflicting view for the person who's going to go through the website.
Yes. And again, it kind of depends on the author. So some authors write under a pen name and they want that anonymity that comes with that. They don't want to connect their, you
Mm.
know, legal identity with their author
Yes,
identity. And that's fine. And if that's the case, absolutely keep it all separate. Don't cross-link anything, don't mention.
yes.
Um, but there are other situations where authors use pen names for different reasons,
Mm.
and it might make sense to connect those dots.
Yes.
So on your, it's not something I would put front and center and do a big, fanfare over, but on your about page where you're digging into a little bit more depth of your history, who you are, whatever it is you're sharing, nothing wrong with connecting those dots there if the author wants to, but it's not required. It's
Mm.
it's really that is a personal choice depending on why they're using a pen name and that sort of thing.
How much of online presence helps authors, do you think? Like, let us say that I just came into your website or your Instagram page by chance, and then I see all that you're doing. And do I see what you're presenting, posting, and how many followers you have? Does that give me a signal that you're successful? Or do I read your work and then, everybody's not going to go the J.K. Rowling way. It's not that simple. But that's a question I have. Like, whether popularity sells your books, or your book sells so you become popular.
It's a great question. So, and it's kind of a two-parted question, really. As
Mm,
far as whether or not having an online presence is important to an author, I would say yes. And again, with a caveat, depending on who you are and what your primary visibility lanes are. So
right.
if you're an author that is doing more in-person stuff, that's where the majority of your effort and time and focus should be, if that's
Mm,
the path you want to take.
right.
But you should still have an online presence. It doesn't need to be time consuming. You don't need to, go all in, but you should still have it because having an online presence signals credibility. So the other part of your question there, as far as the popularity side of it, I wouldn't say necessarily that having an online presence is going to make you popular. It's really more about that credibility. When somebody does go looking and searching for your name,
Mm,
regardless of how they came across it, what they find is what will give them the information they need to either have confidence or to trust you, right? And it's often referred to as your digital footprint, right? If you go in and the only thing you can find is a Facebook page through a Google search that was last updated 10 years ago, and that's it, people are going to kind of be like, okay, so are you active? Are you actually writing books? Or, like they're not going to know, right? They can't get information. So having an online presence in what I call a digital ecosystem. So it's
right.
having your social media account, it's having a website, it's having an email list, and everything is interconnected. No matter what visibility lanes you're taking to actually grow your career,
Mm.
having that basic sort of minimum viable structure is necessary, in my opinion. There are people who will disagree, but in today's age, I would
Yes, it
disagree
is.
with
We
that.
are in a digital age which
We are.
nobody can avoid.
Yeah.
But coming back to the same thing, how did authors 2 decades ago, when there was no social media presence, make it big? Like when we are talking about authors like Jeffrey Archer or Sidney Sheldon, whose books sold millions of copies around the world. What were they doing? Because still now I don't know their face. I've just read their books.
Okay, and unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say I don't recognize those names. Are they
Yeah.
traditionally published or are they
So they are
self-published?
traditional
Okay,
publishers.
so two
Fiction
decades
especially.
ago, yeah,
Fiction.
so 2 decades ago, traditionally published
Mhm.
landscape looked a lot different than it does today,
Yes. Yes.
right? And I was, yeah, at least maybe even a little less than 2 decades ago, but in the past, before self-publishing and the internet became really
Mm.
as focused as it is, there was a lot more marketing support that traditionally published authors were getting, right? And more across the board. So in today's landscape with traditional publishing, there's only, I've heard different reports, but it's a very small percentage, maybe 1 or 2% of the authors who sign a traditional contract who are actually getting substantial marketing support. Those are the ones that the lead titles that are getting the dollars from the
Mm.
publishers. Everybody else is pretty much left to fend for themselves when it comes to visibility.
Right.
Depends on the publisher, depends on the author. They might get some support, some guidance, some information. They might line up a couple of interviews or something for some PR work. But overall, unless you're in a particular bucket of their signed authors, you're not getting dollars spent. So 20 decades, yeah, 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, um, more authors were getting more of that marketing budget, right? So that's how. Like there was just a lot more of that behind these authors when they were traditionally published. They got a lot more support. And I mean, without the internet, everything was done, it was all in person. You were going
But
to
I
events.
think it was very organic in the sense the newspapers used to meet authors, and there was a visual presence in the way, like you open the newspaper and you have a full interview, full page for them.
Yeah.
Today, the digital era has changed a lot of things. The same author or the book could be seen in Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, But I still feel that personalized connection is missing in the digital era as it did earlier. What is your opinion on this?
I would agree. I think there's a lot of, behind the screen and
Mm,
not sharing our faces and I mean it's a bit of a pipe dream for a lot of authors where they want to live in their wood in the, cabin in the woods and be a
mm,
popular famous author and never have to talk to people. That's not all author dreams, but there is a number that are like that. Um, I don't think that's viable in today's age. I think it's really important for authors to be active in their own visibility.
mm.
So, yeah, I'm not sure what else to say on that. They need to, and I apologize. I've actually missed the rest of your question again. Can you repeat what it is I'm
No,
answering?
it is like, see, let us say that 20 years ago, when before the digital era,
Hmm.
reporters and editors met authors and
Right.
they used to write about them and review the books. I think it was more harsh those days. Today's reviews don't even get to be known, except that the marketing has become more vibrant and distribution is much easier because you've got platforms like Amazon and Flipkart and stuff like that. Things have been eased nowadays, but some essence has been lost, is what is my opinion. Uh, and
Yeah.
also, now the writing community is growing exponentially, which was not the case earlier.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, there's a ton more because the barrier to entry is so much lower,
yes,
right? It's much
yes.
easier for people to write and publish something. So the things that you were referring to there kind of come down to a difference between owned media and earned media.
Mm,
The Back in the day, the print side of things or TV, radio, this was all earned media.
yes.
And, a PR or
Mm,
publicist person is the one that would arrange those. And especially in traditionally published,
yes.
that there was a lot more emphasis put on that. Earned media in getting those interviews. It wasn't something you had to pay for. You just,
Right.
but you had to have a reason for them to feature you. They
Mm,
didn't just automatically print interviews and articles or whatever on any author that asked. It was coming from a source, a credible source. And I think that's a big difference that we see right now is that these digital publications are inundated with requests from, as you said, the author. How many authors there are is growing exponentially. And so they're no longer just getting contacted from agents and publishers and editors from big companies. They're getting outreach from every
yes.
person who picked up a pen. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Anybody who has thought of this is contacting them. And so it's a lot harder. There's a lot more competition for their attention, which circles back to the owned media side of things and your online presence, why that is so important. Because
Right.
if you're going to send out a request to be interviewed on anything, whether it's
Yes.
print or digital, radio, the whole bit, they're going to look at you. They're going to search your name. They're going to look at what you've got and decide whether or not you are a good fit for their
Yes.
brand because every publication is a brand, right? They have a certain vibe that they're going for, an audience that they're catering to.
True.
So
So
that's how
that's
those
it.
connect.
Then it comes to the question of, okay, we have to be in the good books of editors and reporters, and that because their one line can change your entire career, which is
Yep.
not so today. Today I can change anybody's opinion, creating something. If I can move from Instagram to Substack, and tomorrow I'm a somebody there. So it can erase a lot of things. But earlier days, if you rub the wrong way, and you could get exactly the opposite effect for your launch. Or is it, do you believe that?
I think it's a really interesting perspective actually because there's a ton of cancel culture online.
Mm,
And so there are people who have been who probably feel like they have been completely erased and there's no coming back from that in the digital space.
Mm.
And I, as far as my opinion, I think I kind of agree with you on the fact that back in the day, if it was done in print and radio and TV kind of
Mm.
thing, you didn't have as many avenues and opportunities to try and recover from bad publicity.
Yes, yes.
Whereas in the digital space, you kind of do. You've got more options. I think the thing that makes it harder is that it's our um, oh, own
Effort.
experience with it, right? And our confidence, right? Like,
Yes,
so if, somebody tears me apart and cancels me and whatever, that's gonna hurt, right? Like I'm a human being here. I'm just trying to do my
yes,
thing, right? And even if I make a mistake and I go through all of this or whatever, personally, it can be very hard to come back from that, even though we might
mm,
have more opportunity to recover from that. It's whether it comes down to whether or not the author has the resilience
yes.
make that comeback, I guess, right?
Yeah,
That's
no,
kind of what it
sometimes
boils down to.
long ago, someone asked me if I would like to review somebody's book, and I said no, because that person has taken years to write that, to craft his curiosity and imagination into a written format. And it would take me, just as a reader, to go through and then say a few words which can demolish what he has done with so much care. It like, I
Uh,
mean, I compare it to my interior work, and if somebody says no, this is not right, for a creator, it's can be devastating. But
it can be.
today you see there is lot of lies happening also on digital media, because we just want to say, way, yay, it's fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. I never see truthful, honest criticism or critique coming across in digital media at all. That is sadly missing, because I don't know if people are devouring content to talk about it, or they just want to, it's my image against that book itself. Let us say
Mhm.
that you're giving your book to review, and oh, what Vanita says becomes very important, more important than the book itself. So we kind of overlook that aspect, and I see a lot of people doing that nowadays, which is sadly, it takes away that essence. The quality of critic is very important. Like, okay, this is nice, it's taking you on a journey, I do understand, and but there are certain areas which could have been different, or that's a reader's perspective. So you put across that, and then if you are really capable of being a critic, then you bring in that aspect as the last. But today you see, like, the same group that we are in, and there's another one, and anything and everything, hey, it's fantastic, 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 we want to support, but in the name of supporting, we are not actually doing justice to the work, but we are more caring for the person who's written that. So how do you see this?
Yeah, no, I very much agree with you. It's kind of funny because I see posts come up where authors are really devastated that they got a 3-star or a 2-star or 1-star
Mm,
review. But frankly, if an author only has 5-star reviews, the readership, the invisible readership, I'm going to call them, and I'll explain that in a second. But the invisible readership looks at a book that has nothing but 5-star reviews, and especially like only a handful of them,
mm,
they are not going to trust those reviews at all. Those reviews don't actually mean anything. So
anything.
authors are, really focused on, oh, I need to get reviews and they need to be good reviews and everybody needs to know how good my book is. That actually hurts them in many
Mm,
ways. They would be much better off getting those more critical reviews and whatnot. But some authors, the way they put their self out there, they actually repel any honest and critical reviews.
right.
They, right? Because reviewers are nervous. Right? Reviewers, they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, sometimes is the case. They don't want an author coming after them and attacking them, which sadly has happened,
Oh.
right?
Mm,
So yeah, it makes it a bit difficult. When I mention invisible readers, though, like as an author, the vast majority of our actual readership and growth is invisible to us. These are not people that we will actually connect with and
yes,
build relationships with, right?
right.
they're the ones that are lurking, they're standing in the shadows, they're watching everything, they're hearing from friends and
Yes.
family and whatever, but they're not engaging with the book community or with you as an author. Um, and a lot of authors, like they overlook that. They don't realize that that's what happens in the background. But the only way to actually tap into that invisible readership is by building their core network. So you had mentioned before, as far as like having connections, who you know, and all that kind of stuff. Yes, absolutely. That is very important in today's space. It's always been important. It's something that has, it's all about who you know, not what you know. There's an element of truth in that. Now, it's not about, oh, you've got to know all these really highly popular, powerful
Mm.
people or whatever. What it is now is you need to build connections with like-minded people who are serving the same audience you want to reach and establish connections with them. They can be small. They don't need to be big popular influencers. If you can find a handful of small creators who are building their own visibility in your space, that's going to help you. If you're building genuine mutual,
Right.
and beneficial relationships, you're helping them as much as they're helping you, is what it boils down to. So that's a big part of it. And getting that connected network is what puts you in front of the invisible audience that you actually want to reach.
Yes.
Right. So that's how that all kind of connects. So then with the reviews, it comes back to in that connected network, that's where you build your your trust factor. And like there are people that I 100% trust. Well, I actually unpublished my book because of the trust level I had for an avid reader who really went through my very first book with me and helped me understand what was wrong with it, right? I was
Mm.
like, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. But it took that trust for me to be able to accept and receive that information. So, as part of your core network, when you're building the relationship with reviewers and, anybody who would give an honest critical review, that's going to help you. And especially if you build up enough of a rapport with them that they know that you want them to publicly publish that critical review kind of thing. It's not about tearing the author down. It's about being honest about the reader's experience. It's also not about critiquing their writing. A lot of reviewers don't seem to understand that, especially when you get an editor in there doing
It,
reviewing.
it takes time to build your audience and create your place in the stage world stage, because I see some authors who after a lot of work previously, then they come and just write, okay, answer marching elephant still. That becomes a big poem. That's coming from somebody like Van Der, or like, so what happens? Eckhart Tolle is writing, so that once they get the name, anything they write becomes a odyssey.
So you're saying once they've gotten popular and have a big name, now they can kind of do whatever they want. Is that just
Like initially they have to write pages and pages, about 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 words to make a fiction book. And then it takes them years to get to that point. And after they have published, let us say J.K. Rowling, for instance, right now, I mean, like fat books that she's written. And
yeah.
maybe now, if she's just going to write Answer Marching and Elephant Still, that becomes wow. But the
Mhm.
same thing if as an ordinary person uh, who launches himself with this one line poem, I mean, nobody's going to look at it. So, in many ways, publishers also chase popularity, and many things that go inside this intricacy, which, it is improving. But right now, the stage is set for success. And like, you see, like how earlier I wouldn't have thought of connecting to you across the world.
Right.
Today, yeah, today this is becoming easier.
Hmm.
And I think we are nearing the end of the session, and I think we need two more sessions to talk about this. Seriously, because, yeah,
Yeah.
because it is enlightening, and there is a lot of information that other authors can gain when we discuss things that they might not even be aware of.
Yeah.
Like, I've
Agreed.
not even discussed with you about your personal passions and Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like there is another side to you apart from what you have been doing till now. So I
Yeah,
would definitely like to come back and we need at least one more session.
absolutely. I'm
Yeah, it
happy
has been
to.
very enlightening, and I think we're just scratching the surface right now.
I
Uh,
would agree. It's a deep topic. There is so
yes.
many different angles that we can approach.
Yes, yes, it has been wonderful. I mean, like whatever we have, I think we're just launching, picking the interest for people to know more about whatever we are going to be talking next. So we could have another episode soon, or uh, we can follow with this, or we can schedule for another day. But we have more questions because you have lots to share and offer to people. So I take audio from you now, and we'll get back soon on the same platform right here. And I have lots of questions to ask. Yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I am
Thank you
happy
so much
to
for
jump
joining,
on.
and we will plan immediately. We'll plan our next session. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Vanessa.
Thank
I
you. Bye bye. Bye
appreciate
bye.
it.
Thank you. Bye bye.